You know what stops most people from winning? It's not a lack of intelligence. It's not a lack of resources. It's not even a lack of opportunity. What holds people back is simple. They trust their emotions more than their plan. Think about it. You create a strategy, you write down your goals, you design a plan that can take you exactly where you want to go. But the moment things get tough, the moment fear whispers in your ear, the moment doubt shows up, what happens? You abandon the plan, you let emotions dictate your actions. Here's the truth, your emotions lie. Fear will tell you that you're not ready. Doubt will tell you that you're not capable. Frustration will tell you it's not worth it. But your plan, if it's built with clarity, discipline, and vision, it will never lie to you. Successful people don't live by how they feel in the moment. They live by their commitments. They live by the roadmap they've built when their mind was clear, when their vision was strong, when their purpose was burning inside of them. Your emotions are like the weather, changing every hour, unpredictable, out of your control. But your plan, that's the compass. That's the direction. That's the thing that guides you no matter how many storms come your way. Now, let's be real. I'm not saying ignore your emotions. Emotions are signals. They tell you when something needs attention, but they are not commands. You don't have to obey them. You don't have to let fear decide. You don't have to let anger or impatience push you off course. What if instead, every time those emotions rose up, you said, "Thank you for showing up, but I'm sticking to my plan. I don't negotiate with my fear. I don't negotiate with my frustration. I trust the process. I trust the plan." That's when life changes. That's when discipline transforms you. That's when consistency starts paying dividends that emotion never could. Because listen, success is not built in moments of inspiration. Success is built in moments of discipline. When you didn't feel like showing up, but you did anyway. When you didn't feel like working, but you put in the reps. When every part of you wanted to quit, but you stuck to the plan. That's when you build muscle. That's when you build resilience. That's when you build a life that is unshakable. So the next time you feel tired, discouraged, overwhelmed, don't trust the emotion, trust the plan. Don't ask yourself, how do I feel? Ask yourself, what does the plan say? Because the plan is who you decided to be when you were at your strongest. The plan is your higher self leading the way. And when you trust it, no storm, no fear, no setback can take you off track. Trust the plan. Not your emotions, and you will create a life beyond anything you thought possible. When you look at the lives of people who achieve greatness, one thing stands out. They never allow their emotions to dictate their destiny. Why? Because emotions are temporary, they rise and fall, they shift and twist like the weather. One moment you feel unstoppable, the next moment you feel like giving up. If you live by your emotions, you live in chaos because you are constantly reacting to something that is unstable. But when you choose to live by a plan, a clear and intentional strategy, you step into stability, direction, and power. Emotions might scream at you to stop, but the plan whispers back with certainty and says, keep going. That is the difference between those who merely dream and those who actually achieve. Think about it. How many times have you set a goal, felt the fire of motivation in the beginning, and then after a few days or weeks, that feeling faded? Suddenly the excitement was gone, the enthusiasm wasn't there, and you began to wonder if you were on the right path. That is the trap of trusting emotions. They feel real in the moment, but they are not reliable. A plan, however, doesn't lose energy just because you don't feel excited. A plan is written, structured, thought through, and built with your best intentions. It doesn't waver when you're tired. It doesn't care if you're having a bad day. It just sits there waiting for you to honor it, to follow it, to trust it. The truth is, life will test you. Every plan will be challenged. There will be moments of doubt, fear, disappointment, even pain. In those moments, emotions will rise to the surface and try to convince you to walk away, to settle, to give up. But if you've built a solid plan, one designed with clarity and purpose, then you already know what you need to do. The plan becomes your anchor. It becomes the map that guides you when the storm inside of you threatens to throw you off course. When you feel weak, you don't need more emotion. You need direction, and that direction comes from the plan you trusted enough to create. Let's be honest, emotions are not useless. They are signals. Fear can warn you. Frustration can teach you. Sadness can show you what matters most. But none of these emotions were designed to lead you. They were designed to inform you. The mistake most people make is giving emotions the steering wheel. Imagine trying to drive a car where the wheel changes direction every time the wind blows. That's what happens when you let emotions lead. But imagine instead having a GPS, a clear roadmap that tells you step by step where to go. That's your plan. It doesn't care about the storm outside. It just keeps giving you the path forward. The people who change their lives, who build empires, who transform their health, finances, relationships, and future, they all operate from a place of discipline and commitment to the plan, not how they feel in the moment. They may wake up exhausted, but the plan says, get up and go. They may feel discouraged, but the plan says, keep showing up. They may feel like progress is slow, but the plan reminds them that consistency always compounds. And when they look back, they realize that the breakthrough didn't come when they felt amazing. The breakthrough came when they followed the plan even though they didn't feel like it. The mind will play tricks on you. It will whisper, "Why bother?" It will say, "You're not ready." It will convince you that because today doesn't feel good, the whole vision must be wrong. But feelings are not facts. They are experiences. They are temporary states of being. A plan, on the other hand, is built on intention, clarity, and vision. And when you align your daily actions to that plan, you rise above the noise of your emotions. You begin to move in a straight line toward the outcome you want instead of zigzagging every time a new feeling shows up. So the choice becomes clear. Will you be the kind of person who allows the temporary winds of emotion to blow you off course? Or will you be the kind of person who holds steady to the compass of your plan? Because every time you choose the plan over the emotion, you get stronger. Every time you choose consistency over impulse, you build resilience. And every time you honor the plan, even when it's inconvenient, you get closer to becoming the person you were destined to be. Your emotions lie. Your plan tells the truth. That is the reality most people never grasp, and it's why they keep starting and stopping, beginning with fire and ending with ashes. Emotions are powerful, yes, but they are also deceivers. Fear tells you that you're not ready, when in fact you're more ready than you've ever been. Doubt whispers that you're not capable, when in reality you have everything you need to take the next step. Frustration convinces you it's not worth it, when the truth is you're closer than you think. Emotions distort, exaggerate, and mislead, while a plan, if it's built with clarity and integrity, remains steady, consistent, and reliable. That's why the plan is the truth. It is not swayed by the storms of the moment. When you look at your life, you can probably recall times when emotions led you astray. You said something you didn't mean out of anger. You walked away from an opportunity because fear convinced you that you weren't enough. You delayed action because doubt made you question everything. Later, when the intensity of those feelings faded, you realized the truth. Those emotions weren't facts. They were illusions. They seemed real in the moment, but they passed, and what remained was regret for not following through. A plan, on the other hand, doesn't fade with mood. It is the structure that holds you accountable to who you said you wanted to become, not who you temporarily feel you are. Think about how the greatest achievements in history came to life. Do you think the people who built them trusted their emotions every step of the way? Of course not. If they had, the first sign of fear or rejection would have stopped them. The first wave of doubt would have crushed them. The first setback would have convinced them it wasn't worth it. But they weren't following the whispers of emotion. They were following the truth of their plan. They had a vision, they mapped it out, and they honored that map even when their emotions tried to pull them in 100 directions. Your emotions are wired for survival, not success. Fear exists to protect you from danger, not to lead you into growth. Doubt exists to slow you down so you can think twice, but if you let it run unchecked, it will paralyze you. Frustration exists to signal that something needs adjustment, but if you listen too closely, it convinces you to quit altogether. The plan, however, is not designed for survival. It's designed for victory. It is the roadmap your clearest mind created when you weren't in the grip of fear or frustration. That's why it's the truth. It's the higher version of you laying down the path forward. The lie of emotions is that they feel permanent when you're inside them. Fear feels like it will last forever. Doubt feels like a permanent wall. Frustration feels like an endless loop. But every emotion eventually passes, and when it does, you're left with either progress or regret, depending on whether you trusted the emotion or trusted the plan. The truth of the plan is that it doesn't rise and fall like a wave. It stays there, solid, unwavering, reminding you of the direction you chose. That's why people who trust their plan create results, while others who trust emotions remain stuck in cycles. Imagine two people with the same goal. One wakes up and asks, "How do I feel today?" If they feel motivated, they act. If they feel tired, they stop. If they feel scared, they back down. The other person wakes up and asks, "What does the plan say today?" It says run, so they run. It says write, so they write. It says build, so they build. At the end of the year, one person has a pile of unfinished attempts and excuses. The other has results. The difference wasn't intelligence, talent, or opportunity. The difference was that one trusted the lies of emotions while the other trusted the truth of the plan. Your plan is a reflection of truth because it was designed when you were clear, when you saw the bigger picture, when you were aligned with your purpose. Your emotions are reflections of moments, temporary storms that pass through. If you live by storms, you drift. If you live by truth, you progress. Every time you face a choice between emotion and plan, you're really choosing between illusion and truth. And when you choose truth consistently, you begin to build a life that emotions can no longer control. Discipline beats motivation every single time, and yet most people are addicted to motivation. They wait for the perfect podcast, the perfect video, the perfect quote to fire them up before they take action. But here's the problem. Motivation is fleeting. It comes in waves. It gives you a temporary rush. But the moment life throws stress, discomfort, or boredom in your face, motivation disappears. Discipline, on the other hand, doesn't care how you feel. Discipline is the muscle that makes you do what you said you would do long after the mood you made the decision in has faded. That's why people who rely on motivation never finish what they start, while people who rely on discipline build lives that others can only dream about. Think about the last time you felt inspired. Maybe you watched something powerful. Maybe you listened to someone who lit a fire inside you, and in that moment you thought, "This is it, I'm ready." But then a few days later the energy wasn't the same, the excitement was gone, and suddenly the action felt heavy. You told yourself, "Maybe I'll wait until I feel motivated again." That's the trap, because you don't need motivation to move forward. You need discipline. Motivation is the spark, but discipline is the fuel that keeps the fire alive. Discipline is doing the workout when you don't feel like it. Discipline is making the call when fear says not today. Discipline is putting in the work when nobody's watching and nobody's clapping. Motivation gets you to the starting line, but discipline takes you across the finish line. And the truth is, every extraordinary result in life comes from ordinary actions repeated consistently. Nobody wakes up with endless excitement every day, but the people who change their world wake up with a commitment to act regardless of how they feel. There's a reason why athletes, soldiers, and leaders train themselves in discipline rather than chasing motivation. They understand that the body and mind can be trained to obey a standard rather than a mood. If you only work when you feel good, your life will be inconsistent, scattered, and fragile. But when you build discipline, you build reliability. You become the kind of person others can count on, but more importantly, the kind of person you can count on. Discipline is self-respect in action. It's proving to yourself that you will show up no matter what. Motivation is like the weather, sunny one day, stormy the next. Discipline is like the calendar, steady, structured, and dependable. If you rely on weather, your path will be unpredictable. If you rely on structure, your progress will be inevitable. And here's the beauty of discipline: it multiplies over time. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you reinforce the identity of someone who keeps going. Every time you act without waiting for the feeling, you weaken the grip of laziness, fear, and doubt. Eventually, you stop asking yourself, "Do I feel like it?" The only question becomes, "What does the plan require of me today?" The irony is that when you live with discipline, motivation actually shows up more often. Why? Because progress is motivating. Seeing results is motivating. When you act even without motivation and you begin to see small victories pile up, suddenly you feel more inspired than ever. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act, but the truth is, action creates motivation. Discipline fuels action, and action fuels momentum. That's why those who rely on discipline build unstoppable momentum, while others are still waiting for the right mood to arrive. Discipline also frees you. People think discipline is restrictive, but the opposite is true. Lack of discipline enslaves you to your emotions. It keeps you trapped in cycles of starting and stopping, constantly battling regret. Discipline liberates you because it creates consistency, and consistency produces freedom. The person who is disciplined with their health has the freedom of energy. The person who is disciplined with their finances has the freedom of choices. The person who is disciplined in their craft has the freedom to create impact. Without discipline, you're at the mercy of fleeting feelings, but with discipline, you own your future. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is not motivation, it's discipline. Ordinary people rely on bursts of inspiration. Extraordinary people rely on systems, standards, and structure. Ordinary people wait until they feel ready. Extraordinary people act and let readiness catch up later. Ordinary people let emotions win. Extraordinary people let discipline lead. And the more you exercise discipline, the stronger it becomes, just like a muscle. In the beginning it feels heavy, uncomfortable, maybe even painful. But with repetition, it becomes natural, automatic, part of who you are. Discipline beats motivation because motivation asks, "Do I feel like it?" while discipline asks, "What needs to be done?" Motivation depends on moods, while discipline depends on commitment. Motivation fades, but discipline compounds. And in the end, it's not the bursts of excitement that build your legacy. It's the daily choices, the relentless consistency, the actions taken in silence when no one is applauding. That's where greatness is forged, not in the spark of inspiration, but in the steady fire of discipline. Don't negotiate with emotions, because the moment you start negotiating with them, you give them power they don't deserve. Emotions are persuasive. They will present arguments, they will offer excuses. They will make you believe that what feels right in the moment is actually the right decision. But if you've ever listened to fear, if you've ever listened to doubt, if you've ever listened to laziness, you already know where it leads. Regret, wasted time, and missed opportunities. Negotiating with emotions is like letting a child run the household. It might feel easier in the moment, but it creates chaos in the long run. Your emotions can have a voice, but they cannot have a vote. The plan is the law, and once you decide on it, you follow through without debate. Think about how often people talk themselves out of greatness because they negotiate with emotions. The alarm goes off in the morning and the emotion says, "You need more sleep. It's fine to skip just once." The plan said, "Wake up and train," but the negotiation with comfort won. You're about to make the call that could change your career, and emotion whispers, "What if they reject you? Maybe tomorrow would be better." The plan said, "Act now," but the negotiation with fear won. You sit down to work on your project, and emotion says, "You're too tired. You deserve a break." The plan said, "Put in the reps," but the negotiation with fatigue won. Every time you negotiate with emotion, you let temporary feelings rob you of permanent results. When you decide not to negotiate, everything becomes simpler. There's no longer a question of if, only when and how. The plan says this is what you're doing, and you do it. End of story. The energy wasted debating with yourself, convincing yourself, waiting for the right feeling, all of that is eliminated. What's left is clarity, focus, and action. The people who achieve massive success are not superhuman. They just refuse to negotiate with themselves. They build a plan, and when the emotions show up with excuses, they shut the door. That's why they succeed, because their actions are not up for debate. Emotions are temporary waves. They rise and fall, but when you negotiate with them, you anchor yourself to instability. One day you feel like working hard, so you go all in. The next day you don't feel like it, so you back off. Over time, you create a pattern of inconsistency, but when you refuse to negotiate, you build consistency, and consistency is what creates momentum. Momentum is what creates transformation. One small action repeated daily without negotiation becomes a habit. Habits compound into identity. Identity shapes destiny. All of it starts with the decision to stop negotiating with emotions. This doesn't mean ignoring emotions completely. It means recognizing them for what they are: signals, not orders. Fear can signal that growth is near. Frustration can signal that change is needed, but neither gets to decide your next step. The plan decides. You acknowledge the feeling, but you don't argue with it. You don't give it the power to alter your course. This mindset creates strength, because you're no longer ruled by impulses or moods. You become ruled by commitments, and commitments are what turn dreams into reality. The mind is clever at creating stories. It says, "You've done enough today, you deserve to relax." It says, "This task is too big, you'll never finish it, better not to start." It says, "You're not ready, maybe later will be better." These stories sound convincing because they play on your emotions. But the truth is, if you have a plan, you already know what needs to be done. The stories are distractions designed to protect your comfort zone. Negotiating with them keeps you stuck in that zone forever. Refusing to negotiate allows you to break free. Every time you honor the plan instead of the emotion, you train your mind to obey a higher standard. You prove to yourself that you can lead your emotions instead of being led by them. That builds trust within yourself and self. Trust is the foundation of confidence. When you know you won't back down, when you know you won't negotiate, you stop fearing challenges because you already trust your ability to follow through. That's where real freedom comes from. Not from waiting to feel ready, but from knowing you'll act regardless of how you feel. The world doesn't reward people who negotiate with their emotions. It rewards the people who act with consistency, the ones who keep showing up, the ones who refuse to let feelings rewrite their plan. It's not about never having fear, doubt, or laziness. It's about never giving them the steering wheel. The plan is the driver. The plan is the authority. And when you live this way, you rise above the ups and downs of emotion and step into the power of unwavering commitment. Trust the higher self that created the plan, because the version of you who sat down with clarity, with vision, with focus, is not the same as the version of you that feels tired, stressed, or discouraged in the moment. The higher self is the one who looked beyond temporary feelings and designed a path aligned with your true goals. It's the self that wasn't clouded by fear, wasn't distracted by laziness, wasn't overwhelmed by doubt. That self had perspective. It saw the bigger picture, and it mapped out the steps that would lead you there. When you're in the middle of the struggle and emotions are screaming at you to quit, the only way to stay on track is to remember that the plan was created by the best part of you. Trust that part, trust that vision, trust that wisdom. Every time you set a goal, you do it from a place of strength. Nobody sets a goal when they're in their weakest state. You don't decide to lose weight, build a business, or change your life when you're exhausted on the couch. You decide when inspiration strikes, when you see a possibility, when you catch a glimpse of who you could become. That's your higher self stepping forward. It's not wishful thinking. It's truth. It's the part of you that knows your potential and refuses to settle. That higher self builds the plan, so when the lower self shows up later with excuses, with fear, with procrastination, you have to remind yourself, the plan didn't come from this weaker version of me. The plan came from my best self, the one I aspire to become. The challenge is that in daily life, the lower self often shouts louder. It tells you to sleep in, to take it easy, to push things off until tomorrow. It tells you the work is too hard, the goal is too big, the results are too far away. It convinces you that comfort now is better than success later. And in that moment, it feels so real, so convincing, that you forget who created the plan in the first place. That's why trusting the higher self is critical. It's remembering that the plan is not just a list of tasks. It's a blueprint from the strongest, most capable part of you. Think of it like climbing a mountain. At the bottom, you see the peak in the distance and you create a plan to get there. That plan comes from vision, from clarity, from the higher self that believes the peak is possible. But halfway up, fatigue sets in. The air is thin, your legs ache, and emotions scream at you to turn back. If you listen to the emotions of that moment, you'll never reach the top. But if you trust the higher self that mapped the route, you keep climbing. The higher self isn't swayed by the pain of the moment. It sees beyond it. It knows the destination is worth the struggle. The higher self also understands something the lower self never does. That growth is uncomfortable by design. The lower self avoids discomfort. It runs from anything that feels hard. But the higher self leans into it, knowing that discomfort is the price of transformation. When you trust the higher self, you stop fearing the struggle and start embracing it as proof that you're on the right path. You see the obstacles not as reasons to quit, but as evidence that you're growing stronger. Every person has two voices inside, the voice of limitation and the voice of possibility. The voice of limitation belongs to the lower self, always focused on safety, comfort, and the easiest way out. The voice of possibility belongs to the higher self, always focused on growth, contribution, and the fullest expression of who you can be. The plan was written by the voice of possibility. That's why it feels exciting when you first create it. It came from alignment with your highest vision. But the moment the voice of limitation starts to creep in, you'll be tempted to throw the plan away. This is where trust comes in. You have to choose whose voice you'll follow. Trusting the higher self doesn't mean the journey will be easy. It means you commit to honoring the vision even when the lower self resists. It means you stop second, guessing the plan just because you feel tired or uninspired in the moment. It means you keep showing up because the self that created the plan knew exactly why it was important, even if the present version of you has forgotten. And every time you choose to act according to that higher vision, you bring yourself closer to becoming that version permanently. You stop just glimpsing your potential. You start living it. The truth is, the higher self is always there, waiting to lead. The problem is, too many people let the lower self win the daily battles. They surrender to excuses, to doubt, to temporary emotions. They forget that the plan they built came from the strongest place inside them. But if you choose to trust that higher self, if you choose to live by its guidance instead of negotiating with the weaker impulses of the moment, you begin to create a life that reflects your greatest potential rather than your passing moods.